In this video, we're going to be looking at designing additional forms in our current application. Now, the reality of the situation is that we're writing an application for our car rental business. So far, we have one form, and let me just bring it up quickly. And this form is really just collecting data that goes towards creating a rental record. However, I'm sure if you sit down and think about it, there's much more to a car rental business than just, logging the fact that somebody, the name, the cost, the date returned and rented, the type of car, and clicking submit. There's more to the business than that. There are other things that need to get done. Now, the problem is that you don't want to try and do everything on one form, because this is one form. We are using this one form to collect our car rental record. So Winforms allows us to build multiple forms, and each form can have its own functionality, and pretty much they're all autonomous, meaning they're all able to act on their own. So in this video, we're just going to explore what goes into creating a brand new form and how we would go about launching it from another form. So back in our project, we're going to right click on our project file in our Solution Explorer. Now remember, we have the solution and then we have this project, right? So I'm right clicking on the project and then I'm going to click add. And then I can say new item or I can say form. Either way, I'm going to get the same dialog box, but ultimately I'm going for the form. So I'm going to start off with new item. And then in new item, I can look for a form, but then I can go to the subcategories to the left and see Windows Forms. And then what I'm going to do is select the form template, which is a blank Windows Forms, Winforms form, right? It's just saying you get a blank form, a blank template. It's also asking for a name. So our very first form that we would have started the project with was called Form 1. That doesn't really tell me what's going to be on that form, does it? So if I have up to 10 different forms doing 10 different things, I don't want Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. I treat naming my forms the same way I treat naming my controls. So I'm going to build this new form and I'm going to call it main window. And I'll soon explain why I'm calling it main window, because I am actually going to be using this new form for something very special. So we call it main window and then we click add and then allow Visual Studio to create that new form and give us this brand new canvas. So you see, it looks just like how Form 1 looked before we started dragging over new controls and such, right? Now, the fact that we named it main window, it comes by default with the word main window up in the title bar. You'll also notice that the new file is called main window and every other file associated with it is also called main window. Now, I'm just going to add a quick label to it. So I'm just going to go back to my Form 1 design and I'm just going to copy this label. I'm just borrowing this label, putting it on the main window, and then I'm going to change the text that's in it. So I just right click it, go to properties, and then I'm just going to change the text to say main window so that when it launches, I know exactly where I am. All right. So main window, main window. There we go. And also, I don't want main window to just be printed like that in camel case in the title bar. Maybe I want something else. So I'm just going to click the form itself, right click, go to properties, and then I'm going to change the text that is being displayed up there. So I'm just going to say main space window, press enter, and then that looks a bit better on the eyes, right? Now let's see how this main window looks. So when I click start, it is still going to launch Form 1. Now, this is Form 1. We've been working with Form 1. Now I have a new form, and I would like to see this new form on the window. However, I don't necessarily know how to get to that form. So I need to put something in place that allows me to launch this form when I need it, right? So coming out of debug mode, just clicking stop. What I'm going to do on Form 1 is bring over another button. So I'm going to show you how you can go about launching another form from one form, launching another form. So we have Form 1. It's always going to come up with Form 1 by default. But I want that when I click this button, I see another form. And in this case, I have main window as my next form or my next window that can be displayed, right? So I'm just going to go to Toolbox quickly. Go to my controls, get a button, And I'm just putting a random button there. Nothing spectacular. This is just purely experimental. It's only temporary. But I just want to get the point across that you can launch a window from another window. So I'm just going to change 1 or 2 properties on this button. And I'm going to let it say launch main window. Launch main window. That's the text in this button. All right, so this button is simply supposed to launch the main window, right? Now, it would have to do that on click. So that means if I'm going to expect the button to do something when it is clicked, then I need a click event, right? So if you finish that sentence just now, kudos to you. So I right click on my button, go back to properties, click the lightning bolt and double click in the click area. So there are 2 ways now. You can just double click the button that will automatically generate a click event, or you could do all of what I just did by going to properties, getting the lightning bolt and then creating the click event. As I said before, always try to be very deliberate. All right. Now I have my button. I notice that I have button 1 click here, and then I have button 1 underscore click underscore 1. So that's where the conflicting names come in, because I didn't rename this button, and this button is also a button 1, and now it's 2 buttons with similar names with similar click events. So once again, it is best if you rename your controls. All right. So I have the button click event for my new button, and then I'm just going to write 2 lines of code that are going to tell me or tell the button that when you are clicked, launch this new window or launch this new form, right? So I'm going to say main window. So remember that everything in C# is a class. So form1 is a class. If we look at it, form1 is a class that is inheriting from a base class called form, right? If I go into main window, it also has its own code file. So I can right click main window, go to view code, and then I'm going to see that main window is also a class of itself. It's called main window because that's what we call the file. And it is also inheriting from the base class form, right? So what I need to do to launch an instance of a main window is to declare an object of type main window. So this is me declaring the object and initializing it. So new main window, right? So remember in C#, this is how we initialize an object of a class. And then I am going to call a function inside this object called show. So similar to how we show our message box, remember we said message box dot show, right? And then that's what pops up the message box to the screen. Well, all I'm saying here is that I want an instance of main window, and then I want to show this window once it's created. And then we discuss using var. So I could just say var right there instead of saying main window, the object is equal to, right? So you have the 2 ways you can write it, whichever one you feel more comfortable with, that's fine. So now the expectation is that when I click this new button, this experimental button in this parental system window, it will launch a window for the main window or launch the main window form. So let's try. So let's start. All right. So I have my parental form up, and then I click launch main window, and there we go. All right. So when I click launch main window, it does appear. It just appears on my other monitor. Notice that each time I click it, it's going to pop up this main window. So you can bake in some intelligence at some point to say, if an instance of it is already open, then don't open anymore, right? But for now, we see that we can launch another window anytime we want once we have the proper code in place. Now that's pretty much it for how we go about launching an additional form from an existing form. So I'm just going to close all the windows, or you can just press stop to exit debug mode altogether. I'm going to do one more thing in keeping with the best practices that I'm trying to promote in my video so far, and that is to rename form1 from just form1.cs. Because yes, it was the first form. Yes, it was the first thing that was there. So by default, it's form1. However, when we start building in other forms, you don't want to have to look at the Solution Explorer and guess that form1 is the parental window. The same way we can just look at this and deduce that main window represents a main window is the same way we should be able to look at the file name for the car rental, I know that it is the car rental record window. So I'm going to rename this form. And by renaming this form, Visual Studio is going to allow me to change out every reference to this form 1 class throughout my solution to the new name. So to rename, I can right click the file and say rename. And then I'm going to call it rental record. Or let's be more specific, add rental record, right? So remember that this window is all about allowing us to insert a rental record. So add rental record, press enter. Then Visual Studio is asking me or telling me I'm renaming a file. Now it's asking me, would I like to rename all references to form 1 in this entire file? And I'm going to say, yes, I do want to do that. And notice how Visual Studio just refactors all the references for me so that when I build Control Shift and B, there are no errors in my code. Also, the bigger advantage is that when I look in my Solution Explorer, I can directly or immediately detect all the forms and what they are for. All right. So the last thing that I'm going to do is look in my program.cs file. Now, in our program.cs file, we have all the code that runs as at the time the program is started. So when I click start, what really happens is that Visual Studio the engine looks to the program.cs file, which executes this main function. So if you were doing the console applications, then you would be familiar with the fact that there is a main function at all times, right? And then what it does is initialize some visual styles, some text rendering stuff. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and teach you what these two lines do. I'll just advise you that if you're going to move them, be sure you know what you're doing. Otherwise, you can leave them alone. But the one that you can modify is the application.run, where it is running and starting a new instance of, we just changed the name from form 1 to add rental records. So what happens is that when you click start, it does this line, and then it runs a new window of add rental record, which is why that's the first form that comes up. So now that we have a main window form that we want to make the landing window for our entire application, we can change this from add rental record to main window. Now what's going to happen is that when the program runs, it's going to launch the main window. So let's try that. So I click start. And what comes up first is the main window. All right. So now the next task that we have is to transform our entire application into what we call a multi-document interface, or an MDI application, where our main window will house a menu strip that allows us to go between all the features and the respective forms that will be needed to support the functionality for this application. Other functionality would include maybe like an archive of all the rental records. So right now we're only adding, but we don't view them unless we go to the database. You don't want to send people to a database. You want people to be able to view them in the application. Likewise, we need to be able to manage the list of cars. And there are other things that we maybe want to do in our car rental application that we cannot do right now. So our main window will now be the landing window, or the first window that launches, to show us all of our options thereafter. And then by clicking each option, we would launch the respective form for that feature.